Hi, welcome to the CoreNet Café. First, I'd like to take a moment to thank our 2020 sponsors. We really appreciate everything you're doing for our chapter. And I want to give a special thank you to Davis Construction, Ben Cohen, who's joining us today. Ben's an executive vice president for Davis and is the group lead for interiors, including healthcare and government. Plus, Ben and I have known each other for over, I think, a decade, maybe a lot over a decade, Ben. So I'm so excited to have you at the CoreNet Cafe today.
Glad to be here.
So Ben, since a lot of people might not know you as well as I do, tell us a little about yourself. I know you're from Pittsburgh and you went to the University of Wisconsin, but how did you end up in DC?
So, I studied geography and environmental studies at the University of Wisconsin, and when I graduated, there's not a lot of geography jobs out there, but I got a letter my last semester from my dad that said, look, as of this date, you're cut off, no insurance, you're on your own. I was like, uh-oh, I better find a job. So I went to the geography library, saw an ad for a geography position here in the region, and came out and got the job offer. So I worked actually at Dewberry and Davis for a year and a half before making a transition over to Davis. And that's how I ended up in the DC area. I needed to support myself.
That's great. Did you know I used to work at National Geographic Society?
Oh, really? That's great. We just finished a large renovation there, actually a $50 million renovation of their campus. So it's a small world.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that.
And so tell us about your role at Davis. So obviously you've been with Davis for a long time if you started there right after you moved to DC. I think over 20 years?
Yeah.
How has your career been there?
Well, so it's interesting how I ended up at Davis. My neighbor was Kim Pexton, who many of you may or may not know. So I was coming home from work one day, and she was out with her family and some neighbors. And she's like, "Where are you coming from?" I said, "Work." They're like, "You're working this late on a Friday?" I said, "Yeah, I've got stuff to do." She's like, "Well, you should come to Davis. It's a great company." And I interviewed and got a job, and it's been over 20 years that I've been at Davis since. Obviously, she moved on and done great things as well. But it's interesting with regards to Kim because she's got a passion for sustainability like me. So we've always really remained connected in that regard. With regards to how I progressed at Davis, I started off really not knowing anything. Although with my geography background, I was very good at looking at maps and plans and drawings and was always paying attention to the details and trying to understand what was required of the contractor, not cutting corners and making sure we delivered on what was requested. So I learned from the ground up how to do takeoffs, how to do schedules, how to talk to people and communicate with people to achieve the goal of completing the projects. And over time, really in 2008, when we started doing a diversification and trying to have defined market sectors, I took a more of an active role in leading the corporate interiors group. And ever since then, it's just continued to grow and take on a leadership role within the overall company as the interiors business unit lead, as well as healthcare and government interiors.
So you've really grown up at Davis. Is that typical?
We have a lot of folks that have been here over 20 years that joined the same year or actually 6 months before me. And so a lot of the leadership now has been here 20 plus years, over 15 for sure. And it just shows, it's an attest to how great our company is. While I was working, I also did get my MBA at Hopkins.
Go Blue Jays.
Go Blue Jays, exactly. And so working full time and getting the MBA, I think that also helped show that I was interested in being more than just a project manager. But the interesting, funny thing about it is that in some of the courses that I took through the MBA, what I found was that when they were talking about how to deal with people, and I mentioned this before, dealing with people with different culture, ethnicity, age, gender, you name it, a lot of the samples and lessons that are, case studies that they give, like I had already experienced them in the construction world. It's just, we get experienced to so many different things in the construction industry that it really, I felt like when it came to that aspect of being an MBA candidate, I was above and beyond where others in the class were.
I did my MBA recently too. We both went to the same school, Hopkins. But I think I found the same thing. It's really great when you're actually working and getting your MBA at the same time. And do you think that really helped as you were elevating your role within Davis?
I think so. I mean, I think that it gave some credibility to the big picture thinking that I think is required to really move a company forward. I think that there's a tendency to just put your head down and do your job, and I've always been trying to figure out a way to look out for not just me, but everyone, providing career opportunities for the folks in the group, providing opportunities for our company to grow, sharing opportunities when it's not the right fit for our sector, but for another sector, and looking big picture at the company and what we want to be and who we want to be in the future. So yeah, I think that it gave some credibility. Also, when it comes to like the marketing strategy and financial analysis and those sorts of things too.
Yeah, it's that overall lens that you get from being that holistic degree.
Absolutely. And I think the project management thing helps too, because you can have the ideas, but if you can't execute on them, then what good is it? So it's being able to actually prove to yourself that you can follow through on something, on a project or an initiative, when you say you're going to do it or want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Yeah, I totally agree. And Ben, thanks for jumping on. It was a pleasure speaking with you last week. I want to just shift topics here for a second. I think you got a great story here with the chapter locally. I know Davis has been a contributor and a personality in the chapter for quite a while. I know in the few years that I've been here, I've had the pleasure of meeting a lot of folks from the firm. So I'd love to get some background on your history with CoreNet and what you typically seek to get out of it, where you see the value.
Well, Davis has been a partner with CoreNet for at least 15 years. It might even be 20 years at this point. So we've been involved for a really long time, and we're proud of the relationship we have with CoreNet. And I think the thing that I've gotten out of it is the fact that a lot of the companies that we want to do business with and be partners with are members. So we are we get to connect with the corporate real estate individuals that are the who's who of the DC market, and even in the nation, right? So there's a lot of thought leadership that comes out of it that we get, a lot of great networking, but also just like-minded great companies that we want to be associated with. So that's I think it's been a great partnership with Davis. Personally, I've been to a number of events, some of the award ceremonies, and we look forward to continued partnership and relationship on the corporate level, and I'll continue to stay involved as well. I just given the market sector that we're in, and I think that there's a great it's a right organization for our company.
Yeah, absolutely. No, totally. And so, just got a quick question for you. Are you more of a happy hour networking event person or education event person?
Well, I'm a lead AP, so I always am looking for an opportunity for low-hanging fruit to get some, extra credential maintenance credits. But prior to having kids, I would say I was probably more of like go out and network thing.
Right.
Now that
I
I've
can
got
attest to that because I saw you at a lot of networking events.
Yeah, right. And since having kids that are still young and in grade school, I like to be home with them to put them to bed and read them a story and get them, eat dinner with them and everything. So I haven't been able to do as much of the nighttime networking. It might be a one-on-one coffee. It might be, so to answer your question, it's more, I like the education stuff. I am a lifelong learner. I'm not ATP in my life, ATP meaning at that point in my life where, I don't have to learn or I know everything. Like I always know there's more to learn, and I always wanted to be more well-rounded. So,
Great.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
It'll evolve, I think, over time. And as my kids get older, I hope to, maybe do a little bit more of both. And, I'm not a big golfer, right? Because I just don't have the patience for it, right? Like
Right.
if I can do something in 5 hours versus an hour and a half, I'm going to try to do it in an hour and a half. So I'm a big runner. I spend more time running, biking, that sort of stuff.
I think maybe I should take that up too. Because even if I wanted to get through quickly in golf, I spend a long time getting a bad score, but I still love it.
It is fun. It's great to get out and being outside in nature is just, it's what we need right now, right? So,
Oh my gosh, I know. Yeah, totally. So it's great to get your chapter story here. I mean, part of what we're doing here with the cafe is building the community and creating connection for the members. And you're a great personality in the chapter, so it's great to hear your perspective and also the perspective a bit from Davis. So I'm going to transition a little bit here again. Um, when we think about project management, obviously you've done many projects. Any projects in particular that were specifically rewarding for you, whether in size or content type of project? Anything that come to mind first?
It's a good question. There are a lot of memorable projects. There was one project that I did in 2002. Actually, it may have been 2000. It was a long time ago. I'm sorry. The days. I'm not great with
Doesn't
dates.
feel like it.
But it was a project where we had to get done because the president was going to be touring the site, and so there was a must complete date. We won a bunch of craftsmanship awards for the project, and it was a pretty special project that we built. You know, I think there's somewhat, you know, a lot of the projects that we do are not really high profile projects, but you know, I think one of like there was a Fannie Mae project that we did where you know, we had a really difficult schedule, and I think it was like 90,000 feet in 8 weeks. And they were doing a white glove inspection the day, you know, the day that we were turning it over, and we went, you know, I was there all night with the super. We were, you know, doing the punch list. We, you know, we had like 5 items and at the end of it, and it was just like so draining. I went out, had a beer with my coworkers, and it was just really nice to celebrate. And I remember driving home, you know, I only had a beer. I wasn't drunk or anything, but I remember I was so tired of driving home. I was at a stoplight in Arlington, and I fell asleep. And like I missed the light, my foot was on the brake, and someone goes up the window, knocks on the window, "Hey, are you all right?" I'm like, "Oh yeah." And it was like a mile from home, so it was like fine, but it was like so draining, but like so rewarding to actually be done. Like it was, I don't know, it sounds miserable, but it was actually really just it proved to me that like you can accomplish things if you believe in it, right? If you believe in yourself and in the team, and you're positive, you can make things happen. And to this day, I still carry that attitude, and don't look for excuses. I look for ways to get things done.
That's great. So it was this, you know, challenging event that I can relate to that. That sounds like a marathon in a very short amount of time. So I'm sure it's a great example of project management and coordination, because I'm sure that has to be on point when you needed to get something done that quickly.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think looking for ways to solve is just a nice transition into our next topic, which I know many of us probably who are listening in are really thinking about, is really COVID-19 and getting back into the office. We're excited to be able to kind of dive into this with Ben, because construction's been essential this whole time. So if you guys notice, he's actually in his office. So I think, you know, if you guys have questions on how Davis has been handling this, even more than we're going to dive into since we have a short time frame, you can leave it in the comments and we'll get to ask him at the end. But Ben, so how has Davis responded to this crisis?
It's a good question. I think that we probably have responded similar to other organizations. You know, early March, we formed a task force that basically included Jim Davis and some of the senior leadership, some project executive from my group, and some field staff and ops staff, HR and legal, and our safety department, and basically have been meeting twice a day and giving daily updates since mid-May, or not May, sorry, since early March, on how on what we're seeing in the industry, and just you know, I think the key is communication internally. So we had these task forces, and then what we decided, or what we realized we needed to do, was really have a project specific density management plan for every project site. And so what the task force did is they created a menu of options that could be applied. We had 3 days to put together a plan for every project that we were on. I actually had to review 33 plans in that process, so it was a lot of long days, but the plans had to be revised, right? Like there was always comments, but through that process, I think we sort of got a really good baseline on how to make sure that people were safe and being able to perform their work safely and go home safely, because it's not just the Davis folks that we're trying to keep safe. It's the occupants in the buildings. It's the workers that are coming to and from the site. And so we've really, we had these initial plans. We've been auditing the plans. There's, literally, I feel like this week, Matt Kafritz, our VP of Field Ops, has been out to, probably 10 sites this week, just making sure that the plans are being adhered to, giving them not criticisms, but audits and how to improve the plans and make sure that folks are adhering to them to keep people safe and minimize the spread. So I don't know if I answered your question, but we've really that's in the field. In the office side, each market sector is and EVP group is coming up with their own plan, and we're going to start thinking about, we don't have a mandatory work in the office requirement. Really, the only reason I'm in the office today is so that the kids don't interrupt as we're meeting. But yeah, so I mean, it's something we're taking very seriously, as we need to, and with the uncertainty moving forward, we're definitely, we have to be flexible, right? We have to be able to respond quickly when the CDC issues new guidance. We've spent a lot of money on super cleaning our job sites when there's been an incident, and I think the goal is to really try to figure out a way to not is to just again communicate with the subs and make sure that they understand the requirements of the job from a PPE perspective, and being open with us. I mean, there's some fatigue that's going on here right now, and folks are like, I'm done with this, and we need to be diligent and remain diligent.
So I think you said a couple of things. So I think number one, something that's really interesting that I don't know if everybody's thought about, is putting together a task force. So finding different people, maybe they're from different areas of the organization, to come together and start to look at what that communication plan looks like. I think that's really interesting. I think something else that people are struggling with that you mentioned, and I'd like to dive a little deeper into, is subcontractors. So, a lot of us have offices that see guests, which is similar when you have subs that don't necessarily work for Davis, but they're coming on to a site that Davis is running. What are the different measures you're putting in place to not only protect the subcontractors, but to protect you and your team?
Yeah, so we have a requirement, obviously, that everyone wears a mask on the job sites, and that they have to remain socially distant. If there is an instance when folks can't remain socially distant, and I'll give an example, is if you've got a couple of folks bringing in a delivery, or hanging a heavy millwork panel or a piece of ductwork, they need to fill out a job site hazard analysis like they would be if they were doing something that was structurally risky. And they have to really prove that they need to work within 6 feet. At that point, they have to be wearing a higher level of protection, not just a face mask, a cloth mask, but an N95 or a respirator, a face respirator. We have a requirement now that even if you are a guest on the job site, project site, that you will be wearing a mask as well, a face mask as well. So we recognize that we may have to provide some of that PPE, and we've been, getting what's available and waiting, 4-6 weeks to get the shipments in like everybody else. But yeah, I mean, the new norm is a lot more job site cleaning, more protection, spreading out the restroom uses on the multi-floor projects, a little more daily cleaning. If the clients need to come on site, we are, getting creative. It could be off hours, when there's fewer people on site for the inspections. We've done some FaceTime punch list walks, FaceTime, a lot of the things that I think other contractors are probably doing or seeing, to minimize the risk on the job sites. The other thing is with regards to the subs is, I think our thought is that on these interiors jobs, there's this outside foreman that goes from job site to job site to job site, and that individual, he or she, may be going to, again, 5 or 7 jobs a day, and they could be a super transmitter. If they get exposed on one, they can expose their whole company. So we've really made a concerted effort to focus on carpooling and these roving outside supers, and make sure that they have proper PPE, and that we're understanding that's a risk that could shut down our job sites.
I think it's so great that, Davis is not only worried about, your own employees, like you and your team and the other divisions, but also the subcontractors. And I think a lot of that's probably driven by the fact that you guys are an employee-owned organization, right? You guys all get to own stock in. So do you think that's having that extra investment that your team particularly has is probably driving some of these extra safety measures and I guess agreement to wearing the masks, right? Because I think we're all a little nervous asking other clients to wear masks in our space.
I think it's twofold. I think first it's from the top down. I think that Jim, Dennis, and Bill are just genuinely great people, and they really care about us. And I think that trickles down to me, to and the other leaders of the company, but also to the superintendents, the project managers, and the laborers. So I think that that's part of it. I also think that you know, it's important that we empower everyone in the company to find the right solutions for their projects. And so I think that, we've got schedules that we need to maintain. We want to keep, these folks need their paycheck badly. And so there's a little bit of peer pressure on them to say, look, yeah, you might be impacted by this, but if the whole job shuts down, we're all impacted. And so I think that's also another part is empowering, let it be a little top down, but also important that it's bottom up too.
Totally.
Great, thank you.
So we did talk about a little game, two truths and a lie. For those listening in, we do not know. We did not rehearse this. We had Ben specifically save these statements so that we could make this very genuine. So we will be guessing. It's not rigged, although I'm going to win. So it kind of is. No, I'm kidding. Totally kidding. So Ben, could you give us two truths and a lie, and Nicole and I'll take turns guessing?
Yeah. So here's my issue with this, right? Like if you don't get it right, then it means I'm that I'm like not good at telling the truth, or it means that like I'm a good liar. Like, is that a good thing, right? Like, don't you want to believe in me? Don't you? I mean, there's something about that we need to work through, right? But I will tell them to you, and hopefully you guess it. Okay, that's what I'm gonna say. All right.
That's some deep analysis. I never thought of that.
So, first of all, and I wrote these down so I wouldn't forget them. I competed in the president's race at a Nationals game. I went to a baseball game in Japan and started the wave. And I heckled an outfielder so bad the manager pulled him out of the game after the third inning. Do you want me to repeat those?
Yes, please, just because that was awesome.
I competed in the president's race at a Nationals game. I went to a baseball game in Japan and started the wave. And I heckled an outfielder so bad the manager pulled him out of the game after the third inning.
Oh my gosh. Nicole, do you want to go first?
I think the third one is the lie. I don't think you heckled anyone, but I don't know. Now I was like the first or the third. I was kind of struggling there. I definitely think I could see Ben starting a wave in Japan.
I kind of hope it's the third one too. So I'm gonna go. I kind of want to go with that as well, but just I guess in the spirit of keeping this fun, I'll say number two because I really want number one to be right, so I can follow up and say which president were you.
So the number one is the lie, and just so you know, I feel like if I'd given more detail on number one, you would have known it was a lie. So I purposely kept like which president it was,
right,
and what year it was, and all those things because I knew that you would guess it. I also was advised I was going to use like a non-baseball one, and I was advised that it would have been so obviously a lie. Like it was about me being prom king.
Who did you heckle?
Oh, it was some outfielder for the Reds. I don't know. He just literally.
I heard Cincinnati.
I'm sorry. I knew. See, I knew. This person was like he couldn't take it, and they actually literally pulled him in the third inning. It's pretty funny. And we weren't swearing. Like I've learned through this whole process that heckling isn't swearing. It's just really good making fun of people.
Friendly making fun.
Right.
So quick question though. If you did join the president's race, which president would you be?
So it has to be one of the shorter ones because I feel like I'd be too top heavy if I was like a Lincoln or something like that. Probably Jefferson.
Okay.
Or Teddy. I mean, Teddy. Everyone loves Teddy. So
yeah, I was about to say that's my go-to.
Yeah, which one would be more believable though? Which one would be more believable?
I would have gone with Teddy. I mean, if you said Teddy, it's just everyone wants him to win. So
Right, and
it's
he usually
gambling.
loses. So like you could just say I ran the race and didn't win, right? Like, oh, it
Right.
must have been Teddy, you know.
Right. Actually, so we're running close to time, and we do have a question here I wanted to get to, which is really good. And you kind of touched a little bit on this already. But if you had some advice for tenants in terms of preparing their spaces for reentry, what modifications are you seeing most, or would you recommend?
So I think a lot of what we're doing in our office and on our job site density management protocols plans would be applicable to the offices. There, most of the corporate real estate firms and design firms have done a really good job of publishing sort of where they see this going. Nicole and I were chatting about the fact that like they've got a China office at Steelcase, and that they've been able to take what they've done there and know how to onboard or respond and return to work in this market because of their experiences that they've had over there. So I think one of the things we do is we've got a lot of signage, right? Like signage is cheap. I mean, what we're finding is that people really don't want to spend a lot of money on this. I mean, there's so much uncertainty in the market right now. It's like we're not just going to throw hundreds of thousands, even necessarily tens of thousands of dollars on solutions that can keep people safe. We need to be smart and find low cost solutions to keep people safe. I'm not saying that lives aren't important. It's just like we don't know how long this is going to last. This idiosyncratic issue is going to go on for it could last 6 months or 2 years. So I think that a lot of it is signage, and then figuring out adjacencies of people, how and they work, and what is a priority. For instance, for us, I mean, parents are important. Like parents are going to be struggling potentially with childcare for the next year and a half, and so you can't just say, hey, you have to be here. Like that's not fair. Like they didn't cause the situation, and so we're looking at how we're going to come back to work in an equitable way, but also in a way that we can be mentoring and teaching and collaborating. Obviously, with Zoom and webinars and all this stuff, it's easier, but there's some teamwork and direct mentoring that needs to happen for us to continue to have that next generation of builders.
Right. Yeah. Especially in our industry. Right. I think
Yeah.
you got to collaborate when you're building and designing.
Mm-hmm.
But great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Great. So that's all the questions. Thank you guys for joining us today. We really appreciated all of your time. And Ben, we especially appreciated yours. Thank you for sharing so much and being so open. If you guys have more questions for Ben, I think you're definitely open to receive some emails, right?
Absolutely.
Especially if you guys want to understand their protocols. So afterwards, we'll make sure Ben's information goes out to everyone via our LinkedIn sites. Make sure you're following CoreNet Mid-Atlantic on LinkedIn if you want to see this video as well. And Mitch and I, this is really fun. So
well, thank you so much. Soon. Thank you so much for including me in this.
Our pleasure, Ben. This was fun. Thank you.
Have a good weekend.
You too.
Have a good one, everyone.